The previous year at that particular event, we'd seen promotion of double breast amputations on one of these stalls. They had little embroidered discs which showed the breast scars, when they've done this, what they call gender affirming care. This was at child eye height on a very brightly coloured stall, because men who are looking to breach those kinds of boundaries never miss an opportunity. They always know where those opportunities are, and I think we've forgotten that. So he'd basically announced to the whole crowd that I was homophobically abusing his husband. That's what he'd done. You're in this situation where you know that the judicial system is being weaponised against people who support reform, for example. The concerns that we share as reform members. We are a target for this kind of weaponisation.
Hello, and a warm welcome to the Reform Party podcast. Today we have a very special guest. It's somebody who's been in the news quite a bit over the last week or so, and today we're going to find out why. So please welcome Mandy Clare. Hello, Mandy.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. Delighted to. So if we can start off, I want to go back to 9 a.m. on the 28th of June this year, and you woke up in bed, and what happened after that?
I had a few worries and a few niggles about whether to go along to this Pride event in Winsford. It's an event that's run by Winsford Town Council. Some of them are run by charities, but this one's run by the Town Council. It's only been going for 3 years. The first year they had a drag queen on the stage surrounded by children, very scantily clad. So obviously that raised a few alarm bells with me. Didn't look entirely appropriate in safeguarding terms. And I decided I'd start going along to Pride events locally as a councillor just to see what was happening for myself. Some of the things that I saw prompted me to gather photographic and video evidence. And when I tried to raise this with the council and with the local charities that run some of these events behind the scenes, I didn't get any joy. I just came up against a brick wall. So then I started to be more public as a councillor on my councillor Facebook page, posting images and videos of stuff that I'd seen at these events around children, saying that I didn't support it as a councillor. And anytime I challenged it in meetings or by email, I would post up the responses or non-responses that I was getting, also criticise the local police. So all of that made me very unpopular with certain groups of people. And so I'd kind of been advised, don't go along because you might not be safe. I'd been threatened at the previous year's Winsford Pride event and threatened behind the scenes online as well by trans activists. Police had been involved. So I was wary about going along, but I decided that if I didn't go along, I wouldn't be able to check whether the new policies I'd managed to get put in place that made the events safer were actually being implemented. So I steeled myself. I put on my SOS pendant fob thing that I'd been given for extra security as part of my job, my political work. With the permission of Reform, I have to add. I told them it was kind of a risky event, but I needed to go. And they said, by all means, wear it. And I did actually end up needing to use that fob at this event. So I went along with trepidation. I'd spoken to a couple of my friends, one of whom had accompanied me to a previous Winsford Pride event. And I asked around, would any of my friends be willing to come with me so that I wasn't going alone? And they did. And I thought because we had the new policies in place, because I had a few people with me, I felt how bad can it get? That was
and then you found out.
Famous last words. So that was the morning. My partner is also a local councillor and he supports me on these things. And he sort of pleaded with me not to go. He said, it's going to go wrong. Someone's going to set you up. These people are out to get you. You weren't safe last time. And I did consider not going. I did consider, because I don't like to think that I'm worrying my partner or my children, my family. And I don't like to take risks for no good reason, just for the drama. I'm not really interested in that. But I did feel that if I didn't go along, it would be cowardly of me not to go, having pushed it as far as I had, just to see if it was safe. And if these things aren't safe for local councillors to go along and check when they've been acknowledged problems around what's been allowed to happen around children, if it's not safe, then we've got a huge problem in local government. Potentially with policing as well, and that's something that people need to know about. So maybe it's not such a terrible thing that it happened the way it did, because the spotlight is shone on it now. But I certainly didn't go along feeling brave. I was very nervous about going.
Well, yes, but you know, the fact just that you've explained that and the fact that you did go along shows that you are brave, in my view, because with the easy option, and in fact, I mean, I have to say, if you'd asked me, should I go along, I would have advised you not to go too, because you know, it was almost clear that there wasn't going to be a good outcome before you went. I think, but
Yeah.
you know what you've now done has been very valuable. So anyway, you go along. So what happened?
So we met over the road. There's a pub over the road across the roundabout. We needed a meeting place, so because we'd already had a kind of a briefing online on
Mm,
WhatsApp between those of us that were attending. And I'd said, please don't wear anything like women's rights, this or that, or no such thing as a trans child, or any of those things. We
yeah,
all believe those things. And we have campaigned on those things separately, but this wasn't a campaign visit. This was just a let's check the policies, let's see how the event is running. And I was very much there in my counsellor role and not to protest the event whatsoever. So we met up. I just briefed everybody. I'd written out some notes beforehand so I didn't forget anything important, but it was basically just reiterating what we'd already discussed, which was let's make sure we've not got anything on us that's going to draw attention to us for any negative reason. We just want to blend in. We're going to try and capture any photographic or video evidence of anything that's untoward, so that we can then later on report it back to the town council or whoever needs to know. We're going to stay together. We're going to stay in sight of each other. We're going to stay in touch on our WhatsApp group, and no one is to leave the event alone. No one is to drink any alcohol until after the event, till after we've left. Once we've gathered the evidence, we've had a look at the stalls, we've watched the first drag act, we've watched the second drag act. Pretty much that's it for us. We're going to leave the event. So that was the plan. And we really genuinely hoped that it would just be an improved event with tightened up controls around the performance, the outfits of the performers, the content of the style of dance or whatever they were doing. And the stall content wouldn't be political, it wouldn't be sexualized, and it wouldn't be ideological or pushing any of that onto children. Because that's kind of what had been agreed. And also that it would be safe, because I'd been told, I'd raised the issue that I'd been threatened by this man the previous year. The security at that point had refused to help me. Some other women had come to my aid. And the security, when they could see what he was doing, he was stalking me. He was holding a sign over my head that said, "Mandy hates trans folk." He was pointing to me, to the audience, very performative,
mm,
trying to get the audience to turn against me. Obviously, it's a LGBTQ plus supporting crowd. So that was quite inciting what he did. But the town council I'd reported to them repeatedly, and I asked them for reassurance, and eventually I got the assurances from them. Yes, it's going to be a safe event. You don't have anything to worry about. So we just really hoped that it would be uneventful and it would be plain sailing. We'd not have any evidence to even gather. That's what we were hoping. And we'd leave safely and there'd be nothing to report, and that would be great. That'd be a good outcome. It was quite different to that. So when we got there, we checked the stalls, and the stalls were all fantastic. There was nothing there like we'd seen the year before, or like we've seen at other local pride events. Nothing pushing this ideology. The previous year at that particular event, we'd seen promotion of double breast amputations on one of these stalls. They had little embroidered discs which showed the breast scars, when they've done this, what they call gender affirming care. This was at child eye height on a very brightly coloured stall. They had TERFs out, J.K. Rowling not welcome here, kink is more than welcome at our pride, you sexy little swine, all in glitter, non-binary hottie, my body and mind are now aligned, and it was proud parent of a trans kid. Trans lesbians are hot too. These were the kinds of messages at a family-friendly event in rainbow glittery colours being promoted to children. There was none of that whatsoever on any of the stalls. There was some rainbow glitter and things like that. It's like, not a problem. It's fine.
So that sounds like you've made some progress then, if you managed to stop all that.
Absolutely. It felt like it. They hadn't actually put a stalls policy in place before this 2025 event, but they have put one in since. But to be fair to them, the stalls were so much improved. That particular stall that was problematic wasn't there. So that was great. The drag queens that had been problematic the year prior had provided copies of their outfits ahead of the event, because I'd been pushing on that front. I'd actually asked them not to invite these two drag queens back again because they got things so wrong the year prior that one of them had reportedly apologized profusely for their mistakes. So this particular drag queen had burlesque danced in front of an audience of babies, children of all ages, parents, in skimpy women's knickers, which were visible. Had like a ribbon skirt on, but you could clearly see these garments underneath. And this pair of knickers had a child-friendly, smiley clown face over the crotch of them. And he was doing a sexy burlesque dance in stacky heels and fishnets and all the rest of it. So as you can imagine, and he had star-shaped removable nipple covers, which were removed during that performance. It's kind of like a stripteasy type of burlesque performance in front of kids. He'd apologized profusely. Everyone's too embarrassed to talk about this, and I'm tired of saying the same things about it, to be honest. But it's kind of like, if everyone's too embarrassed to say anything or too afraid to be called prudish for saying it, then the barriers of what is acceptable around children disappear. They disappear. And then we end up with a Stewart Island, Surrey Pride type situation, because men who are looking to breach those kinds of boundaries never miss an opportunity. They always know where those opportunities are, and I think we've forgotten that. So I'm really keen on us making sure that we're super clear about where those boundaries of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's family friendly, and what crosses that line. And for me, if people want to do that and they want to have an adult kink fest, I don't really care. It's none of my business at all. I just think it needs to be kept well away from children. It shouldn't be getting endorsed by councils or by the police, certainly. So, I knew they'd checked their outfits. They were inviting them back come what may. There was a lot of resentment towards me from one of the councillors who'd actually set up this Pride event in Winsford, and she had openly called me hateful, transphobic, homophobic.
Was it Stella?
I won't, because there may be, I'm considering my onwards.
Okay, right, okay. We'll leave it as a counsellor then.
I think everybody has seen the videos, but
I've seen the videos, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people have become famous in their own right through this, deservedly so. But so I've been live streamed by local councillors and accused of being there to photograph and film other people's children. So this is what they do. They reverse the victim and offender. It's a classic kind of narcissistic abusive technique, isn't it? They want to discredit you with the very thing that you're trying to prevent. So, and I've also had local councillors who absolutely abhor me, they hate me, who are into things like naked bike riding and stuff like that, things like that. So it's the worst of the worst people that I have come up against in this battle, who have been the most vocal. And then as this progresses, you find out more and more about these people, and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that fits in.
Yeah, so let me think. So we were watching the drag acts. The first one came on. He made a joke about Rohypnol, which is, as you know, is the date rape drug. The policy that had been put in place, one of them was that if any of these drag queens came out with anything untoward, they would be immediately removed from the stage. Now, he'd come on making sarcastic comments about having to tone down his outfit, making sarcastic comments about not being able to swear, mentioning things like homophobia. We don't need homophobia and hate and things like that. Like both of them, their acts were peppered throughout with barbed comments of resentment at having to tone things down. And then he made this joke about Rohypnol, and I thought, okay, I don't think that's appropriate in front of children. So I mentioned to my partner, because we were stood right at the back of the field, out of the way, really feeling quite nervous, but thankfully no one had appeared to notice us. So I said to my partner, I'm just going to go over and alert the town clerk and the mayor, who's one of the town councillors, about that comment, just see if they're going to implement the policy here. So, but before I could leave, someone from behind me started remonstrating with me, someone that I didn't know. It was a man. And he was kind of saying, what's wrong with that joke? That's my partner up there something about me being transphobic and on the wrong side of history, just the usual kinds of comments. And I just said, I don't know who you are. You're being very aggressive. You need to stop speaking to me. And I walked away. And I reported this Rohypnol comment to those that were on a stage side, presumably monitoring the acts. They said they hadn't heard the comment. So I said, well, I can show you the video. He did say it. And are you going to remove him? And they said, oh, they just kind of nodded, but it was clear that they weren't going to do anything. So there's a bit of back and forth, me saying, are you sure you're not going to, you sure you don't want to do that? That's your job. That's what you should be doing. That's the policy. They weren't going to. So I thought, okay, I'll leave it. We can pick it up after the event. So I went back to the back of the field. But by this time, this guy was still at my partner, sort of jabbing and really aggressive and leaning forward. And my partner's just kind of stood with his arms folded, slightly facing away from this agitated guy. But the drag queen on the stage took that opportunity to draw attention to me. It was almost as if it was set up. And he said, can you leave my husband alone, please? I think he's had enough. So he said that through the PA system from the stage. So the whole crowd's looking at me and at my small group. Myself, my partner's arrived to give me a phone battery charger, and I've got the 2 of the 3 friends who came along to the event with me, female friends. One of them, we decided she would enter the event separately from us, because she's not known as one of my friends by the trans activists. And so she would be there on the other, she's a Reform member. So she would be there on the other side of the field, and she could film from a distance if anything happened to us. So that was kind of almost a separate safety mechanism that she'd thought of, which was really clever of her.
Yeah.
And it also meant that she was not at risk herself, which was good. The fewer of us that were at risk, the better, really, because she wasn't associated with me. It also meant that she was filming, we were filming the stage, she was filming the stage, apart from when things happened to us, and then she was filming us from a distance. But there were other people there and other town councillors also filming the acts on the stage. But we were treated as a problem for filming the acts on the stage, even though we were only doing what everybody else was there doing. So then this guy carried on at my partner and at me. And the drag act on the stage stopped the music. He was just launching into an absolute murderous cover version of Sweet Caroline at this point. And he said, there's a lady over there. She's trying to film my partner, who's just there trying to be an openly gay man to make us all look bad. And until she stops, I'm not carrying on. So he basically announced to the whole crowd that I was homophobically abusing his husband. That's what he'd done. So everybody at that point are looking. The field's gone quiet because the music's been switched off. And the security make their way over, and they stand and they face in on myself and my friends as if we're the problem. One of the security guards is saying to me, I don't know what your problem is. People are just here trying to have a nice time. So he'd immediately made an assumption that what the guy on the stage had said was a true reflection of what had just happened. I've later found out that that security guard had been briefed incorrectly about me from the outset, from when I arrived. So he'd been watching me. The security guards had been asked by the event organisers to watch me from the moment I'd arrived. So we'd noticed them staring across at us. And we've got footage of that, and we've got photographs of that. But it was very strange. They had arms folded, very sort of aggressive, hostile stance, just staring at me for about 5 minutes before this incident happened. Then they came over, and throughout this whole thing, they faced on us and treated us as if we were the problem and as if we were the aggressors. But there was 4 of us surrounded eventually by 40 people. So 4 of us passive in the middle, surrounded by 40 aggressive people, including clear activists that appeared to be there for the purpose. They were pre-armed with their flags and everything, so that they could shove them in our faces, in front of our phones, and stand bodily in front of us so that we couldn't film the drag acts on the stage. So it very much appeared to be an orchestrated affair. We got jostled, we got assaulted. My friend got her phone deliberately knocked out of her hand. But fortunately, we have video footage of that incident and many of the other incidents. And we also have a lot of video footage of the security guards just watching this happen, us asking them to help us, us asking the town council security staff to help us. One of the town councillors yelling at me and live streaming me and accusing me of being there to film children. Other drunk people joining in with that as another secondary chant on top of transphobic, hateful, why are you even here? That kind of thing. Lots of people drinking. Some teenagers there standing right in front of us, filming us, saying, and we're trying to film the stage and they're filming us and they're saying, stop filming me. So it's putting them, creating themselves as victims and that kind of thing. And then I managed to get away from that scrum. The police officer, when he arrived, sent me away, wouldn't speak to me. I used my fob, my SOS fob. So that, in terms of their policy, I think that's supposed to be prioritized. But he wouldn't speak to me. He would only speak to security. When he did speak to me, he was incredibly hostile. He just said, if you're not feeling safe, you should leave. The town council officer that we asked to help us put her hand up, blocked us from speaking to her. Security guard stood in between us and her. So the whole thing was, there was a perception there, for whatever reason, and I think I know the reason, that I was the aggressor, that we were the problem, and that we were there to disrupt the event. That was the narrative, and that was how the security guards saw it, and that was how the police saw it as well. We wouldn't have been safe to leave at that point in any case, because it's on an island surrounded by water, and we had one exit route, and that was across a crowd who'd been, wound up against us. So whoever wasn't surrounding us was staring at us because we were surrounded, and everyone was blocking our view and pushing us around, giving obscene gestures. It was very clear that we were being mobbed, but it was treated by the police and by the security as if it was a 50-50 situation where we were all at each other equally. So I ended up by the side of the stage so that I could have a clear view of the act, because that was the main reason we were there. And I thought, well, I'm not any safer over there than here. My friends aren't any safer with me or over there with the police and security. So I went off on my own. And I could see the stage, but not for long. I got re-surrounded. And then I can't really go into the detail of what happened by the stage, because again, that's something that I'm considering my next options with regards to. But just as a general summary, the things that I was accused of doing, or the assault basically that I was accused of, didn't happen. That case has been dropped. They've taken 6 months to drop it without providing me with any digital evidence, even my own body cam evidence. But they are the things that happened to me, and not just once. So, and we have video evidence of that. So the security guards removed me forcibly. Some other stuff happened during the course of that removal. And then when the police officer arrived, he said in his statement, he says he didn't see the assault. So he basically just took the word of the security guard, even though he'd seen what had happened to us for the previous hour plus. And once he'd said he was going to arrest me if I didn't get up, and I'd said, well, I'm not leaving, I've done nothing wrong, you'll have to arrest me then. He cuffed me and they helped me up. I stood up willingly. I didn't resist from that point. Once I'd been told I was being arrested, and the police were involved, I just was like, no point arguing with that. But I didn't argue with them removing me across the front of the stage. But once I got to the side of the stage, I decided I was going to plonk myself on the ground, because I got my head back together and thought, I actually haven't done anything wrong. None of us have. Quite the opposite. And I'm not being removed by security guards. The other thing as well was that one of the town councillors had been spending a year spreading a rumour that I'd been forcibly removed by the police the previous year, which wasn't true. So it was very strange. It was almost as if the thing had been said often enough that it came to happen. Whether that was deliberate or not, who even knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that everything you've told me is absolutely accurate, and I know this because I've seen the videos, and your opponents actually are so stupid that they put all of their videos up on their Facebook pages, and when you go into those videos and see what happened, your account is exactly accurate. Now I notice a lot of that stuff has now been taken down, But that
Right.
was right after the event. That was all up there. So as I say, I know that what you've told me is exactly what happened. Now you said you're looking at possible options from now on, and I mean, are we talking things like trying to go for them for malicious prosecution?
Potentially, yes, yeah. There've been a number of failures and
Yeah.
areas of criminality that have not yet been addressed.
Well,
So
how could it be that they gathered all this evidence at the time and decided that there was enough evidence to put to the CPS and for the CPS to charge you and go to court, and then a week or so before your court date, they then what has changed that suddenly that evidence isn't strong enough?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've requested disclosures. The judge ordered disclosures from the
Mm.
CPS, from the police, via the CPS. Um, I don't think it's all that unusual that the police and CPS drag their heels. Um,
Really?
And quite often cases like this are adjourned and then adjourned again and then adjourned again, just because the process is meant to be the punishment, and it certainly is. So, but that hasn't happened in this case. I think we did a couple of smart things, and it brought it to a conclusion sooner than it might otherwise have been brought to a conclusion. But I don't think they could have ever won the case.
Mm.
However, they still haven't disclosed those things to me, but I want those disclosures. So I'm in the process at the moment. I've got people helping me to make sure that I get those. There's going to be resistance. They're going to have to justify why there's resistance. And eventually I don't think they're going to be on a good footing with this. Let me put it that
No,
way.
I don't see how they can be because, as I say, 3 months have gone by and nothing has changed. The evidence is all there. The court date's set. Everything's ready to go. And then a week or so before, they decide suddenly that the case isn't strong enough. That doesn't make any sense. And what it does indicate is that what you said was accurate, that the process is the punishment.
Mm,
And we see this not just in your case, but in all sorts of other similar types cases whereby it is the process which, at the end of the day, they know they're not going to win in court, but they can be malicious in terms of how they treat you, which is what's
yeah.
happened. So I would
Well,
have
yeah.
thought, I mean, without knowing enough about the legal side of it, I would have thought that some kind of action for malicious prosecution would be very likely to succeed. And what about a defence costs order? Are you get anywhere with that?
My solicitors are doing the calculation at the minute as to whether it's worthwhile doing it, because you
Right.
have to pay them to pursue them, and then you have to look at what is likely to be returned.
Mm.
And sometimes one cancels the other out. So that's something that's being looked at the moment. But I've never had to deal with this before. This is all new on me. But yeah, I'm becoming well versed by the day.
Absolutely. Well, I would have thought if it's money you need to do either of those things, I would have thought there would be plenty of people out ready to put their hands in their pockets to help crowdfund you, and I
Oh,
certainly would.
I can't say enough to thank people who've supported me with the crowdfunding, because that was terrifying. Right at
Mm.
the beginning, you're in this situation where you know that the judicial system is being weaponized against people who support reform, for example.
Mm.
The concerns that we share
Yeah.
as reform members. We are a target for this kind of weaponization by the state, and people who oppose transgenderism and the impacts of that on children, women, LGBT rights, free speech, all of those things are also a target. So I'm a double whammy target. And then you add on to that the fact that I've been extremely vocal. I've really embarrassed the local police with regards their lack of political impartiality as a
Yeah.
local councillor. I've built myself kind of a platform on the basis of that, in order to get that embarrassment as far and wide as possible, to try and bring it to a halt. Because I feel like if councillors don't do that, if we're not brave enough to speak that, why are we even
Mm.
bothering to be councillors? Um, and then the same with the local councils, the borough council and Winsford Town Council. I've been extremely vocal. I've really embarrassed these people, and they despise me as a result of that. So they've got lots and lots of reasons to really hate me. All of the examples of where the police have drenched themselves in rainbows have been there, showcased on my councillor Facebook page. So right at the beginning, I'm thinking I'm in the cell for 22 hours with no
Oh God.
phone. So that's like, and I'm injured. I am injured as well physically at that point. You're basically on the floor, because there's nothing, no kind of, it's not a mattress that anyone could ever describe
No,
as any kind of
no.
mattress. 22 hours. And yes, I'm there just contemplating, well, how are my kids? What do they think about what's happened here? Are they all horrified? Are they all worried out of their minds? I don't think I can contact them. I've only been given one phone call, and I've used that to call reform.
And let me ask you about that, because
no,
at the time, I'm right in saying you were working in Sarah Poachin's office at the time.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'd only just started. Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the fact that you had been arrested, and that would have put the party in a very difficult position, because, as you know, every mainstream media outlet is looking for anything to jump on reform about, and if so, they would have to be very careful. So they, at the time, I think they suspended you initially.
Yeah, so that, I mean, all of that was done. It wasn't done in a callous way. That's
No,
important to say. So I've had a couple of people that I'm in contact with within Reform at a senior level throughout this whole thing, this
right.
whole ordeal. And they've been in my corner. So they've
Good.
met with
Good.
me, you know, an
Good.
early stage. They spoke to me on the phone as soon as I came out of custody. I met with them. I was very shaken at the time. I think I was like the color of an ashtray or something. I just looked terrible. I was really traumatized. And they were very sweet. And even when they had to do that announcement about the suspension, they were like, look, well, this is what we're going to have to, this is our policy. We have to, we've got no choice.
That's right.
Here's how we're going to handle it. And they've been kind of with me throughout in the background.
Well, that's great. I mean, I was concerned because there's always the temptation in these kind of situations for the party to say, "Oh, this is not worth the candle. We'll throw her away."
Yeah. I mean, if someone gets arrested in the circumstances that I was, I mean, there was videos circulating online where the trans activist had portrayed it that I'd hit somebody.
Mm.
When you look at it properly, I'm actually being hit by a sex toy and I'm pushing that sex toy back at the brandisher.
Yep.
But they made hay with that footage early on. And other people said that I'd punched pregnant women, I'd kicked children, I'd thrown chairs, slapped people. There was all sorts of things being said about me. For Reform to have retained the whip and stayed in my corner, that's not an easy thing for them to have done, given how under the cosh they are currently from all directions. The slightest hint of anything at all untoward, and most of the media will pile on them and make a lot out of it, make a mountain out of a molehill. This did look bad. You know, I have to accept that it did look bad on the surface of it. And at that point in time, criminal charges against me, I couldn't speak out. I couldn't really defend myself. I mean, in the cell, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how is this playing out in the media? You know, what on earth are Reform thinking about this?
Mm.
What impact is this going to have on Sarah, on my job, on the party, on my family? You know, but I knew, I kept going over in my head, right, okay, so what happened? What actually happened? Because I was traumatized and I thought, I can't forget what happened. And in the cell, you're allowed to have a piece of paper, as many pieces of paper as you want, and a pencil. You have to keep asking for a new pencil because you've got no pencil sharpener. So, and they also gave me notes about what my rights were. So I scribbled all over that, all around the writing, just to remember, so I didn't lose my recollection of exactly what had happened through the trauma of it. I wanted to get it down, written down fresh in the moment. So, and I was able to bring those notes out with me, and I knew I'd done nothing wrong. And even when they interviewed me, Reform had helped with identifying a good solicitor to come in and be with me for the interview. And even when they interviewed me and showed me the video of one of the security guards, and they were saying, look, it's very clear here, you do this and you do that. It was very leading the way that they interviewed me. And I was saying, no, what I've just, because I described to them exactly what happened before I saw this interview. And then when I saw this video, I said, well, as I've just said, he does that, I do this, she does that. And you could see in front of your eyes what I was describing to them, and yet they were trying to describe it a different way to me from what we can see. But that video has never been provided to me, interestingly. Right. So I knew that I'd done nothing wrong. But I know that the system is 100% being weaponized against people like me at the moment, and I've given them lots of reasons to do that. So it's pretty terrifying. Most lawyers will not look at this without having a few grand on account. I had no idea how I was going to approach that. So it's isolating because everybody on your side is, well, not everybody, but there's a lot of people on your side that are looking at this footage and these comments by trans activists. She's done this and she's done that. And they're thinking, oh, this looks us all look really bad. Maybe we shouldn't be associated with her. So it makes you feel ashamed because it's the justice system, and we grow up thinking that if you're caught up in that, you're bad in some way.
Well, at times like these, you do. It is when you find out who your real friends are, isn't it? And quite frankly, anybody. I mean, I took the trouble to look at the video, and I knew right from day one that you were absolutely innocent in this thing. And I'm surprised that the other people didn't bother to do the same.
Thank you.
I am very pleased to hear that Reform have been supportive, because I was concerned that, as I say, from the party's point of view in this kind of situation, it's sometimes easier just to walk away from it and say, we don't want Reform involved in this. But it's important that Reform is involved in this, because it's part of our party policy.
Mm.
And looking at the thing more generally, I think the last time we spoke, we were kind of congratulating ourselves that we had broken the back of the trans thing. We just had the Cash report, we just had the Supreme Court ruling, and everything seemed to be moving in our favour. And now when I look at it, we're right back to having puberty blocker trials in the NHS, and it seems to have gone back again. Is that your feeling?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's fantastic because Reform have signed up to this letter.
Yeah,
it's a cross-party, cross-party letter. So it's Rosie Duffield who's been very strong on this issue, and she's ex-Labour, but she's independent, isn't she now? So she's a good person to pull together as an independent a cross-party letter, because I know the tactics with this. So, and I've done it myself. So sometimes within the council, one or other side, for their own benefit, will put together a motion that the other side can't possibly not support without looking absolutely terrible. But you're forcing them to agree and to get all of the congratulations for bringing that motion forward. So cynical emotions and things like that are used very cynically for political gain, and we've all done it. But I think what's great about Rosie Duffield is that because she's independent, she's been able to get everybody on board with it, and there isn't that threat that it's going to benefit one party over another to bring it forward, which shouldn't be an issue, but it is. It's politics, So, but I think what's amazing is that Reform have got full square. They're standing against
all of our MPs signed it, didn't they?
Brilliant. Yeah, very strong. Yeah, very good. And that's exactly what we need. We can't compromise on something like that. There's no room for compromise with that. This is the thing. It's children. So,
well, can I say, Mandy, that you haven't compromised. You haven't compromised on your beliefs, and you've been had a terrific ordeal, horrible ordeal, and you've obviously been very brave throughout it all. So, can I just say, on behalf of everybody, congratulations, and can I ask you, are you going to go to Winsford Pride next year?
If I do, I'm going to take some close protection with me, some large men.
Yeah. Well, look, that's great. As I say, I'm sorry for your ordeal, but let's hope something good comes out of the other end of it. And if you need any help with regard to taking things forward, with regard to extending the looking at the malicious prosecution or defence cost order, whatever it is, put another crowdfunder up. I'll be first in there.
That's really kind. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Well, look, thanks again for being back on the podcast. What I'll do is I'll link in the show notes to this to our previous conversations, just so people have the sort of the full picture. But for now, thanks very much indeed again.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye.